Well, welcome to Tyrian Explorers again. I just thought that I'd come in and do a couple of the Lion's Arch jumping puzzles while the city was being destroyed. Seemed like a bit of a fun thing to do, and at the same time I could actually have a bit of a discussion about what I think of the patch, what I think of the result of the patch, and where I think things may or may not go. Also, how much do you love those screams? A desecrated Lion's Arch and jumping through a jumping puzzle like nothing is wrong. So what I think about the patches, I'm just going to go over the last two patches as one patch, because that's sort of what it feels like to me. The patch that's just gone past, not the one that's currently out. I liked it, I had a couple of hours of fun. I'm not sure it's everything that I'd want in a patch though. I feel that we're getting a lot of these patches of late. Even the whole jungle worm and giant marionette patch felt a bit sort of... Actually no, I'd say that those were better than this patch. There was more purpose to what my character was doing. There was more specific things that I felt my character was doing, where when I was supposedly rescuing all these citizens, even if I could go up to them and help all these events, they just repeated so often. I sort of felt like I was doing dynamic events that wouldn't stay around and didn't really link together very well. I would have liked it if, say, when the miasma failed in certain areas, that there were actually visible changes and even mutations in the enemies. I don't know, something would have been really nice there. Overall, it wasn't a bad patch, and it's certainly better than some of the earlier ones, like the first Tower of Nightmares patch. Actually, thinking about it, the first Tower of Nightmares patch was basically the precursor to this. It's the same formula. You're running around between a couple of points, repeating the same events so that you can get achievement points. There wasn't a lot of story either. I know certain people like Wooden Potatoes will go, well, there is story if you look for it. Yes, I know it's there. It's not a lot of it though. And while some of it's cool, I feel that at this point in the story we needed more. Which brings me on to the current patch. I've basically run through, I haven't done all of the content by any means, and this footage that's in the background was actually recorded back with the previous patch. Put simply, I don't care about any of the world content. And by that, I don't mean the actual storyline. The story instance, I liked. The going into the drill, I liked it. It's the stuff before that I just couldn't get behind. I just had no interest in it. Scarlet's thing, loved. The whole fight with sort of the holographic Scarlet, it was pretty easy, but it was fun. And that's the thing, it doesn't have to be hard, it just has to be varied and interesting. I've been a strong advocate for harder content in Guild Wars 2, but what I really mean when I say I want harder content is I want more variance than there currently is. I believe that there's a lot of very easy to easy content and some sort of medium to hard content in dungeons. Usually the stuff that's classified as very hard is more mechanically hard and not actually hard in a gameplay sense. So like you got to defend an NPC and you've got to rely upon people not doing the dumb thing, or you've got to rely on the Colossus Rumbulus fight thingy in Ascalon. Now you've got to rely on that NPC not charging into the boss and killing himself. That stuff is hard, but not because it's hard. It's hard because the mechanics are flawed. This fight was easy, but the mechanics were quite good. Not perfect, but good. Anyway, so on to the main thing. Holy cow. I might actually stick a bit of the video in the background. I really liked the final cutscene to this. Amazing. Well, not amazing, but holy cow. So we're getting another Elder Dragon, and I've maintained for a long while that that's where we needed to go. We don't need the Elder Dragons to have huge personalities known to us either. It's actually sometimes better to not have that information. I'd rather have human on human, or rather humanoid on humanoid interactions. So rather than dealing with the enemy, we're dealing with the sort of various factions. I also want to see how the Pact comes into this. Personally, I'd like ArenaNet to take a different sort of view to the Pact. I'd like for us in this new living story to be recognised as part of the Pact. I'd also like the new living story to not necessarily be tied to lower levels. I understand giving the lower levels something to do is good, but keep it to flavour events that happen rather than forcing all of the content to be able to be done by the lower level people. Or at least allow them to scale up. I think scaling up's a better option. Yes, it's going to be harder for them, but they can still take part in the majority of it rather than gating it off completely. So, yeah, Moredremoth. I think the biggest question for me is, was Scarlet being a Sylvari pure happenstance? Or is it just really that the Pale Tree may actually have something to do with the Elder Dragons? I know this has been speculated on for a long time, but this is the first bit of sort of solid information we have. Anyway, my ending thoughts are, the living story is getting better. It's a long way from being something that I'd consider to be particularly acceptable. I think this patch, well, both of these patches have had very little story. Some people will complain, but no, these had very little in-game story and I needed more. I want more of the writing that went into the first Halloweens, finding all the ghosts and stuff. That was story writing. Even Ghosts of Ascalon as a book, to a lesser extent, Divinity's Edge book as well. Those were decently written, and I'd like to see this reflected more in the in-game world. I feel that the world has been built well, but it's just implementation lets it down, and sometimes it doesn't even make sense why that implementation is gone. The final topic that I'll bring up before the end of the video is the concept of the Lion's Arch being destroyed completely. I quite like the idea, but I also see a lot of flaws in it, and ones that don't get talked about a lot. People mention the living story and they can just keep the markers and all sorts of stuff like that. I actually think that Lion's Arch has to be rebuilt in some fashion. The reason being isn't just because of the living story. There are so many events, so many character dialogues, all tied to do with Lion's Arch, and it would just really damage the world. The world has enough continuality issues as it is, and I really don't want to see that get any worse. Not only that, but people need to take a step back. They've got to view the game from what a new player would feel. How much investment are you going to have in defending Lion's Arch through Claw Island on all of this different stuff? A place you've never been to before. Like you're defending like the sewers, for instance, in Lion's Arch. Why? You know it's already been destroyed. And I understand that it's going to be one step back in time and all of that. I just think that having Lion's Arch be rebuilt and then having a marker saying this was a year ago or this was 2 years ago in game terms to explain the changes is more important than actually just wiping out the city. This said, I actually have nothing against them taking maybe 6 months to rebuild the city, or even a full year. Make it so that the city takes a full year to be rebuilt, and give us all sorts of events throughout all the different zones where we're collecting resources and stuff, and new players can be giving resources towards Lion's Arch or running caravans between zones, between areas, and all sorts of stuff like that, and helping out at refugee camps and without it actually being completely destroyed. This way people feel that the world is more living. The last time I got a sense of the world being alive would have had to have been back with the Lost Shores event. I know people are going to dislike me saying that, but I actually think that that was one of the strongest entries, content and story-wise, into the entire patching system. Yes, it was riddled with bugs. Yes, it was really laggy. But if it wasn't riddled with bugs, and if it wasn't laggy, I think it would have been by far and wide the best patch that Guild Wars 2 has experienced. I'll end this video here. I just want to leave on the note by saying I will be making some more Tyrian Explorers videos. I'm going to be making some jumping puzzle videos that'll just lead me around. I'll possibly make some more polished speculations videos and just small things that could change in the game. I have a couple more places that I discovered last year. I have 2 in Gandharan's Fields, which I probably will go for next. There's a small cave behind a dungeon, well, mini dungeon in Gandharan Fields. And there's also an Asuran laboratory. I don't think I've seen anyone actually get into either of those before. I only managed to do it through the Guardian's teleport tricks. So that'll be quite interesting. Anyway, thank you for watching. See ya!